Good day. This is Dimitri Lascaris coming to you for Reason to Resist from Montreal, Canada on November 24th, 2025. And we are pleased to be joined again today by our comrade from Beirut, Laith Marouf. Laith is the executive director of Free Palestine TV. He's also an expert in broadcasting law. That's not his main gig nowadays. He spends most of his time on the front lines of this heinous war that seems to have no end in sight. And thank you so much for doing that courageous and invaluable work and for joining us again today, Laith.
Great to be with you, Dimitri. Thank you for having me, and it's good to be in your company.
I wish we could be having this discussion in more positive circumstances, Laith, but this weekend, yet again, Israel committed a ceasefire violation in Lebanon, multiple, I imagine, and also in the Gaza Strip. And in Lebanon, committed a violation that strikes me as particularly provocative. It claims to have murdered Haitham al-Tabtabai. I hope I pronounced that correctly, who I understand is Hezbollah's chief of staff, also known as Sayyid Abu Ali. He was the most senior military official, assuming he has been killed. This was the third attempt on his life, according to Israeli media, which reported that the two prior attempts occurred during last year's war with Israel. And that, of course, culminated in a so-called ceasefire brokered by the United States and France, which was supposed to have come into effect in November of 2024. And according to Al Jazeera, Hezbollah has retaliated to Israel's countless ceasefire violations only once since this so-called ceasefire came into effect. And that was, according to Al Jazeera again, in December of 2024 when it attacked an Israeli military position. The savages south of the border responded to that attack with a series of air raids that killed at least 9 people, according to the Lebanese Health Ministry. So, Laith, I guess there is one important detail that I'd like to clear up with you before I ask you about what comes next. And that is that reportedly 4 other persons were killed in this strike that murdered Ali Tabatabai. Is that correct? Were there other victims, and do we know who they are?
Yes, so Hezbollah has acknowledged that Commander Haitham al-Tabtabai was assassinated, martyred in this attack, and the 4 other people were in his unit, whether it is his assistants or guards. There's at least 20 somewhat people that are injured, all civilians that live in the same building that was targeted. The apartment in the building was targeted with 4 missiles. I went today and filmed at the location. Just hours ago, there was a funeral for Commander Tabtabai and his companions, his comrades. Tens of thousands of people showed up in Ladahi. There was a lot of drones flying around, but that didn't deter people from coming out. This also coincided with a demonstration here in Hamra Street. Around 1,000 people showed up, not only to condemn the assassination and the attack on al-Dahi. By the way, this was the first attack on Beirut proper since the end of the ceasefire. Beyond the fact that this was a provocation by attacking a high-ranking member of Hezbollah, it was also a provocation by attacking Beirut. It also happened on the National Day of Liberation, the Independence Day of Lebanon in 1943 from French colonial rule. So this attack had many layers of provocations to it, whether it's the provocation to the Lebanese people as a whole, the Lebanese state, the Lebanese military by doing this on the Liberation Day or Independence Day, and also a provocation for Beirut, people of Beirut, and a provocation of Hezbollah. So the mood was very angry on the streets. Even this demonstration in Hamra, which was originally organized to highlight the 20 somewhat Lebanese that are prisoners of war inside Israel that nobody cares about. The Red Cross hasn't seen them since the end of the war. No lawyers, no family contact. But now they added, of course, to the demands of this administration on Hamra, that the government and defends the country, and that everybody stands behind the resistance, the armed resistance.
Just to clarify a couple of things, you said this is the first strike on Beirut. I understood that the genocidal entity had bombed southern Beirut on at least 4 occasions before this attack. Are you distinguishing between southern Beirut, where the prior attacks occurred, and central Beirut? Is that what you mean by the first time?
No, I meant like the actual borders of the Beirut municipality,
Right.
or greater Beirut. The other attacks were just outside the Dahi or just outside Beirut on the highway to the airport, that would count as a different municipality. So, yes, there has been attacks just on the edges of Beirut, the sprawl of Beirut, but not in the municipal borders of Beirut and the southern suburb.
Understood. And with respect to these prisoners of war, it sounds like uh, people, their family, they don't even know if they're alive. And presumably, how is it known that they were actually taken prisoner? Isn't it possible that they were killed in combat, for example, or in strikes, and that their bodies were simply taken away? As you know, the Zionist entity has a practice of taking the bodies of those whom it assassinates when that opportunity is available. Do we have any confirmation at all from any reliable source that some or all of them are still alive?
Well, this is important to talk about because it shows another layer of the depravity and the monstrosity and the satanism of the Zionists. There's a few of these prisoners of war that were, it was operations that everybody saw them being captured alive, including, for instance, that a person that the Zionists claimed is a member of Hezbollah's navy. I remember they did a drop on the coastline north of Beirut, and they kidnapped this sailor and claimed that he's part of Hezbollah's navy. So we had, there's a few also on the front line during the war that were captured, and there's proof that they were alive when they were captured. And that's maybe out of those 20 names, those are like 5 or 6 of them only. The rest of the names that we know are prisoners of war, Lebanese prisoners of war, was because there was Palestinian prisoners inside these dungeons, underground dungeons that don't have any windows or anything, that were released. And when they got released, they said, I was in this cell, in this jail, with this person from Lebanon, from this village, and they told me to inform their family. Okay? So that's like, 3/4 of those 20 names that we know are all because of Palestinian prisoners saying that they have seen them in those jails. Now, of course, there is tens of Lebanese civilians that we still don't have their bodies. So we don't know if they're alive or dead above and beyond those 20. There's also some of those Lebanese warriors that we know were killed, but we can't reach their bodies because they are just at the edges of Israeli bases or whatever, and that the Israelis are not allowing even the UNIFIL to go in to withdraw their remains from the scene. So overall, up until now, the Zionists have refused to give a list to anyone, even to the Red Cross, about the names, ranks of Lebanese people that they are holding as prisoners of war. So the 20 names that we have could be just a fraction of the reality of the numbers that are there.
Okay, let's talk about how Hezbollah is likely to respond. I want to share with our audience, and you've probably seen this, Laith, a statement that was published on the Resistance Network Telegram channel. I believe this was on this past Saturday. And this came from the deputy head of Hezbollah's political council, Mahmoud Kamati. We are committed to full coordination with the Lebanese state and army. Today's aggression on the southern suburbs breaks a new red line and a U.S. green light for escalation. There is no choice but to adhere to the resistance, and continuing this violation cannot be accepted. We do not comment on what the enemy says about the response, and the leadership is studying the matter and will make the decision. The resistance is the one that decides how to respond to this aggression. We're working to confirm the identity of the figure targeted. This, of course, has been superseded by the acknowledgement you mentioned that the chief of staff was in fact killed. And then he concludes by saying all possibilities are possible after today's targeting, and the leadership will make the appropriate decision. It seems to me, Laith, that if there isn't a very significant military response from Hezbollah, that would be rather damaging to the prestige of the organization and to any capacity that it might have to deter the genocidal entity from continuing to ravage Lebanon and even to kill the most senior figures from the organization, from Hezbollah. I'm quite struck by the degree of restraint that Hezbollah has shown over the past. We're now talking about a year of near daily violations of the ceasefire, the so-called ceasefire. Do you think, and I also would add that in that statement I just read to you, this member of the political council used the phrase red line, that Israel has crossed a red line. What indications do you see that there will be a significant military response, or do you think that Hezbollah will continue to exercise restraint?
Look, in the next few days, the Pope of Catholicism is supposed to land in Lebanon. It's going to be his first international visit. And he is here to show solidarity with the Christian population in Lebanon. People are putting a lot of pressure on him to visit the Christian sites in the south of Lebanon and Christian villages in the south of Lebanon, especially ones that have been damaged, like the tomb of Simon Peter, Saint Simon Peter, and the site of the wedding in Qana, and the other churches that were damaged. So, of course, it's not in the interest of Hezbollah to retaliate before the Pope is here. This will cancel the Pope's visit. It will, probably disappoint a lot of the Christian population of Lebanon, and they will be blamed for ruining this visit, the first papal foreign visit. So I don't expect them to retaliate before that. In my mind, it would be ideal if they retaliate while he's here. Let the Pope see the reality of what's going to happen and how Zionist crimes are committed, and how does it feel to be living as a neighbor to this abomination. So that's what I would think. But of course, most probably they will wait for him to finish his visit before they do something. And I think the Zionists either committed this crime with this in their mind, that the Pope is coming and that's going to delay things and is going to give them more time to assess the reaction of Hezbollah, or figure out what possible plans Hezbollah has as a retaliation. I don't think it's going to happen in the next week at least. But Hezbollah could surprise us all, and they could be as cynical as I am and do it while the Pope is here.
Mm-hmm.
Whichever way they retaliate, they also, I think, know that the Zionists are itching for a full-scale war on Lebanon. And why the Zionists are itching for this is because they're scared of the United States getting fully engaged in Venezuela. before they and that the U.S. military will be too busy to come to their aid if there is a full confrontation. So it's in the interest of the Zionists to start this as fast as possible before the U.S. is busy somewhere else, which we don't know if even the U.S. is going to do that. But let's presume this is the reason that they're accelerating their attacks, and they have, just behind them, the Security Council, recolonization mandate, where codification of genocide and land theft into UN motions. So they have that high. They have also the high behind them of the Arabic and Muslim comprador collaborationist class, finally, stopping to pretend that they support the Palestinians and out collaborating with them on that. So maybe they have that high also, that they feel that they need to ride and trigger a war right now. But this is why I think Hezbollah will be playing it steady, because up until now, Hezbollah absorbing the Zionist attacks over the last year has demolished many of the plots that the US and the Zionists had for Hezbollah internally, against other sects in the country, or the use of the military against them, which didn't pan out, or the use of HTS against them, which again didn't pan out. So up until now, Hezbollah has, with its patience, been able to absorb all the plots against it and, diffuse them. A little bit more patience is not going to harm them.
As for the Pope, this American Pope, I can't for the life of me imagine why. I mean, I'm talking here about a legitimate explanation, not an illegitimate one, why he would not go to the South to see what the genocidal entity has done to not just the Christian villages, the entirety of the South, but of course, particularly the Christian villages and Christian churches. I mean, one might reflexively respond, well, he'd be putting himself at risk, but I thought that was all about what Christianity is all about. It's about self-sacrificing and putting, especially when you're in a position of power and influence as he is, putting your own well-being, attaching to it less importance than the well-being of the oppressed and the victims of injustice. So do we have any indication about whether this Pope is actually going to do the right thing and travel to the South?
Well, I'm not sure, but from the people that are involved in his trip here, the people that I've been talking to in the Ministry of Culture of the Vatican and others, it's clear that a huge swath of the Christian denominations that are part of the Catholic, umbrella, have been asking for that. Now, we don't know what the Prime Minister of Lebanon, who is a collaborationist, Nawaf Salam, what he has been telling him, because of course the Pope is not going to go down without the government approving his visit. So what I'm hearing is that while the vast majority of Christians want his visit to the South, there is clearly some naysayers within the Lebanese government, the cabal that is around Nawaf Salam. The president, on the other hand, Joseph Aoun, he comes from the south, and his village was attacked. So he has an interest in bringing the Pope even at least to his village, if he's not going to take him all the way to the south to the village of the president. And so there is competing interest right now. Nawaf Salam doesn't want the image of the Pope walking in those ruins, while he, as the prime minister, didn't dare go. And the president, as the highest representative of the Christians in the country, politically speaking, as a Christian president, he has the interest of showing the population, the Christian population, that he is doing his best to have the Pope visit those locations. So I don't know how this is going to pan out. I hope actually the Pope and the Vatican make the decision of going down to the south. This will be a win for the church. This will be a win for the Christians of Lebanon, and it will be a win for the Lebanese civilians as a whole. Such a high-ranking representative of humanity, not only Catholicism, to visit the South. There hasn't been, by the way, anyone that visited the South, any politician from outside Lebanon, since the end of this war. And so the Pope will be doing a good deed on behalf of all of humanity if he does this, and I hope he's listening.
Did I understand you correctly to say that the Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has not visited Lebanese border villages since the so-called ceasefire began? He hasn't gone once?
He hasn't gone once. There was a couple of times that he attempted to go, and he didn't like, how people faced him off in the streets in the bigger cities where before he even got close to the border. I'm sure he flew in a UN helicopter a couple of times, probably on top of this ruins. We don't have proof of that, but that's most logical thing. I've seen members of the parliament do that here that are associated with Nawaf Salam. So this is what I feel. He is scared of going down to the south of Lebanon and having to answer questions from the citizens that are still in their villages there or wanting to go back to them. So he's been avoiding that. The president, on the other hand, has gone to his village and other villages in the south, and he's gotten a good reception from the population. And that shows you how much goodwill people have if you don't betray them fully. at least don't stab them in the back. If you're a representative, if you're not going to defend them, at least don't stab them in the back. And that's, I think, where the difference lies between Aoun and Salam.
In the Lebanese parliament, what political party or parties are the base of support for this prime minister?
None. This is a prime minister that does not belong to any political party. And this is, again, one of the weaknesses of him, and also why the US wanted him. They don't want a political affiliated person to be the prime minister. Look, they think that this will give him the freedom to say the worst things, which he has been saying a lot of bad things that are against the resistance and against the Lebanese interests in general. But if we look back at his attempt to face off with Hezbollah on the ground, to force the military or the security forces to confront Hezbollah, and it shows now how weak he is, because he couldn't fall back into a party militia, for instance, right? Like, if this prime minister was associated with a party, each party here in the country has a militia, an armed militia, and they're the thugs that balance your weight politically in the country. And having no thugs behind them means he cannot actually deliver on any of the big talk that he's, the big words that he's using, the threats that he's making, the humiliation that is in his words against the resistance. All of those are now showed him as an irrelevant person, that he can yap, but he cannot bite, and therefore he's irrelevant. And that's how the resistance is treating him right now. They just don't care about what he says. He doesn't have any power to do anything.
I have to say that I'm unpleasantly surprised by how much of a collaborationist he appears to be, because after the International Court of Justice ruled in January of 2024 that it was plausible that Israel was committing genocide, this was on an application made by South Africa, and it ordered provisional measures in Gaza, which, of course, Israel has completely disregarded and treated like toilet paper. The head of the ICJ, who at the time was an American former State Department lawyer by the name of O'Donoghue, when she retired, she was replaced by Nawaf Salam, who was an ICJ judge. And he was the president of the court when it issued a further decision, which essentially accused Israel of committing apartheid in the occupied territories, and proclaimed the occupation to be illegal, and ordered Israel, or it was an advisory opinion, as I recall, and the opinion included a provision that Israel was required to end the occupation forthwith. So all of this was and is an important legal precedent, and he supported it as the president of the ICJ. What happened, Laith? I mean, how did the man turn out to be such a puppet of Washington after having, concurred? I think he actually wrote the main decision, which was quite negative for Israel.
Yeah, you see, look, this is where the limitation lies when we take legal frameworks when we're talking about decolonization. Um, you know, up until now, international law, as we know it, first off, is dead at this moment. Okay, but before we talk about its death, even before the death of international law at the shores of Gaza, international law was de facto, as you know, not de jure, meaning what can you bring into fact by force and or through people just complying themselves without you forcing them to. And as we've seen over the decades, no Western genocidal leader has ever been punished for their crimes. No Western power has been punished for the colonization of Vietnam, Algeria, the destruction of Iraq, nothing. So I think when we discuss decolonization through legal framework, there's a huge margin for imaginary theoretical things that people like Nawaf Salam can excel in. It's fine for the US that a useless court like the International Court of Justice declares Israel as an apartheid or an occupation or committing genocide because there's no force behind it. And also, that same ICJ wants to condemn resistance, force to bring that international law into facts, are condemned as terrorists. So, international law is de facto. You need a force to bring it into a fact, and the force that's going to bring it into fact, you're condemning it as a terrorist. So, checkmate. There's no point. He is allowed to say those things because he will condemn the resistance as much as he condemns the apartheid and the occupation itself, which makes it 1 plus minus 1 makes it 0. That's literally what it is. And here we see him still continuing as a prime minister of Lebanon to talk about Lebanese rights, Lebanese human rights, Lebanese land, Lebanese this. But he condemns the resistance. You see? So he is diverting everyone away from the facts, the force that can bring international law into fact, and calling them, even within Lebanese territory, as terrorists, as problem makers, and therefore he is annulling any possibility of bringing international law into fact.
This brings us to the question of the Lebanese army. I understood that a few weeks ago, the president, Aoun, ordered the Lebanese army to confront the Israeli aggressor in some manner. Has there been any kind of confrontation? And if not, what's the point of having an army if you're never going to use it to defend your territory from constant aggression?
Yeah. I mean, look, of course, the president had to, number one, um, you know, put a space between him and the prime minister because of all the enthusiasm of Nawaf Salam to use the army in confronting Hezbollah and killing its own citizens, as the imperial envoy Thomas Barak used for those words, that the army is supposed to kill its own people. And so that was important for Joseph Owen to say. Of course, the Lebanese army has medium sized weapons, machine guns, a few machine guns on top of APCs, and that's it. They don't even have tanks. They don't have anti-tank missiles. They don't have air defenses. So to expect them to confront the Israelis is delusional, uh, especially without the coordination with the resistance in an operation. And given that Hezbollah said that they withdrew from south of the Litani, the Lebanese military would be by itself trying to face off with the Zionists as they uh, violate the ceasefire or breach Lebanese territory. And up until now, that didn't happen. In fact, the Zionists attacked just beside two Lebanese military bases over the last 2 weeks. They also attacked multiple UNIFIL bases and troops that were, investigating locations in the south of Lebanon, throwing, sharpnel bombs, so throwing white phosphorus bombs, and the UN UNIFIL force had to complain. They had multiple soldiers injured. So I don't think the Lebanese army will be defending Lebanese territory any minute soon. Maybe if and only if there's a full out war, that the Lebanese army will find a way to get involved in this war, especially that they will be the main force stationed south of the Litani and will have the duty to defend if there is an invading force that enters Lebanese territory, which I think is also very unlikely. The Israelis are really still scared. They don't know about the underground infrastructure that Hezbollah has in the south, and if it's connected to locations that they could travel very fast to the front lines. This is all up in the air. And you know what? I've heard a lot of people, make comments about why does Lebanon not have air defenses? And remember, me and Jew were talking about this in the beginning of this war.
Mm-hmm.
I said maybe we should fundraise for for air defenses for Lebanon, and let's see if the Lebanese government will refuse the gift from the peoples of the world.
Yeah.
And now I have another question: would China actually even sell us those air defenses if we, as a humanity, raise a few $1 billion to buy air defenses for Lebanon? Will even China sell us those air defenses? That's now up in the air with that abstention at the Security Council.
Yeah, a few $1 million probably buy you one or two missiles at the going rate from the Pentagon. But in any case, I want to come back to, we will definitely come back to this UN resolution in China and Russia. But I just want to ask you about one other thing, some recent news in Lebanon, and that is reports that the genocidal entity was using widely banned cluster munitions in Lebanon. This is an image from an article in The Guardian published on November 19th. What can you tell us about this, Laith? Does this appear to have been, does this banned and deadly weapon appear to have been used since the genocide in Gaza began? In other words, over the past 2 years in Lebanon, or is this more historical in nature, this allegation?
No, I think they've used it. Obviously, they were very desperate during the Ulul Ba's battle. Those 66 days, they, faced off with fierce resistance, and they lost whole columns of tanks as they attempted to invade Lebanon. And this is all documented. And there's even in one location where the invading force was attacked and casualties, and the Israelis sent a second invading force to rescue them, and they got clobbered, and then they sent a third. So these are three columns of armored vehicles and Merkavas that were destroyed in that one instance. And in those instances, the Zionists lose their mind and they fire everything they have, just like the Hannibal kind of directive. And so they were firing cluster bombs, incendiary explosives, air pressure bombs that take out all the air from the area, just to stop the resistance from either capturing all of those injured Israeli soldiers or being able to take advantage of this opening and find a way into Palestine. So the Zionists have used these cluster bombs specifically in those areas where those heavy battles occurred. They have, of course, used white phosphorus widely in Lebanon over the year and a half of that battle. And they have been using GBUs that have depleted uranium, and the whole country is now riddled with that. So it's not out of the question for them. They are genocidal. There's no forbidden lines. They can commit genocide and not be stopped. Well, why would they stop themselves from using cluster bombs if they can get away with rape on TV? You see what I mean? So yes, this is for sure confirmed that they used cluster bombs in Lebanon.
Now, when I was there, the several times I went down there during the hostilities, and I'm sure you are fully aware of this, the Israeli settlers had largely vacated from the northern settlements in occupied Palestine, for example, Metula and Kiryat Shimona. And the Israeli reports are that most of them have returned since the ceasefire went into effect. So I'm curious to know what you've been able to observe in your visits to the south. Does it appear to you, we're talking about here settlements that are visible from the Lebanese side of the border. Does it appear to you that they have returned? And if so, I would think that this, murder of Hezbollah's chief of staff is actually endangering them, because it's greatly increasing the risk that there will be a retaliatory response targeting one or more of these settlements.
Yeah, I mean, we did a tour of the whole border from Naqoura on the coast all the way to Shaba in the foothills of the Golan Heights. And, we had zoom cameras. We were looking at the documentaries that we were filming were about the incursions into Lebanese territory that the Israelis have, built over the last year of ceasefire, quote unquote. But at the same time, we had a chance to film and look at all these colonies on the other side, and from just visible activities in these colonies, it's clear that there's for sure no more than 30% of the population back. So all this hype about the majority of the population being back is a lie. In fact, much of the colonies on the borders of Gaza and in the north of Palestine have not been, fully back their population, and I don't think that they're going to come back. There was surveys done of these colonists, specifically in the north of Palestine, but they, almost 40% of them said they will never come back. So that shows you the reality. It's also you can see the industrial zones, how they're inactive. There's all these smokestacks that they're not. There's no smoke coming out of them. All these industrial zones. There was only one industrial area that we saw that was actually doing something, and it was a mushrooms farm.
Right.
So it was, and this is like the biggest mushroom farm in occupied Palestine. So clearly they have business. They're gonna sell their mushrooms in the markets. Otherwise, there's most of the industrial zones are pretty dead in especially the Hula Valley, and this is where the vast majority of these colonists in the north of Palestine are, in the Hula Valley.
So let's turn then to this resolution, which I like to refer to as the abomination, the UN Security Council resolution passed 1 week ago, endorsing Donald Trump's criminal and fraudulent peace plan, as he calls it. Interestingly, Laith, the first time I publicly commented on this was, I think, Tuesday morning, the day after it was adopted, when I was interviewed by Jamal Thomas. You were also a frequent guest on Jamal's show. And later that day, after I had given the interview, I watched you do an interview. I think it was with Jamal, in which you also talked about this resolution. I wasn't surprised that we expressed rather similar views about this whole thing. And I guess what I want to talk to, what I want to focus upon, it's a difficult conversation for us to have, because uh, so much of the commentary in the anti-imperialist alternative media, those programs that focus upon geopolitics as we do, um, tends to be quite appreciative, shall we say, and forgiving of the governments of Russia and China. And certainly, I've paid a very significant price here in Canada for taking positions that my adversaries claim are essentially Kremlin propaganda or Chinese propaganda. So, for example, I actually went to Crimea and to Russia during the war in Ukraine, and I interviewed people in Crimea from who had a Russian perspective on things. As a result of that, there was a front page article in the National Post, one of Canada's most widely read newspapers, accusing me of being a Putin apologist. I did a speaking tour after that trip to Crimea and to Moscow, and I was repeatedly canceled. So my point in saying all of this is I've got the battle scars to prove that I ain't no Russophobe, and that I actually am quite prepared to criticize our belligerent and imperialistic policies towards the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China. And having said all of that, I'm absolutely appalled that they did not veto this resolution. But I'm more interested in your reaction to this. What lessons do you take away from it? And also, why do you think they didn't? Neither of them vetoed the abomination.
Look, I definitely went on a rant on Jamal's show, and it was pretty fresh, the vote. And I went into detail with my thoughts. I also did an interview on India and the global left that was even more detailed in my thoughts, and people should watch that. The whole episode was basically about this. So, in this brief time that we have left here, it's very important to recognize a few things here. We as Palestinians have withheld the hordes of the empire for 2 years. The resistance in an extermination camp that is besieged was able to hold the whole empire to a standstill for 2 years. The axis of resistance as a whole gave it all they can and offered the biggest sacrifices of any movement. And the achievements of the Palestinian resistance, the Palestinian struggle as a whole, are unprecedented, not only on the battlefield, October 7th itself and what followed, but on a global consciousness scale. Palestine and the Palestinian people, in their steadfastness, have accomplished what the whole Soviet bloc, socialist bloc, and the whole third world movement, non-aligned movement, couldn't achieve in 60 years of a propaganda war against the empire. The children of Gaza, the people of Gaza, with their cell phones, were able to demolish 80 years of propaganda accumulated in the minds of humanity, not only about Palestine, but about international law, human rights, democracy, representation, all of that. All of that has been burnt to the ground by the resistance in Gaza. So, China and Russia, as emerging new powers, have had not only the good fortune of having the Palestinian resistance do the job for them of exposing the hypocrisy of the West and the viciousness of the West and NATO and everything that comes with that, but they also had the goodwill of humanity as a whole that was looking at them as an alternative to this imperialist camp that is genociding left and right. And when the moment and the international stage was there for them to appear as the new alternative fully, instead of vetoing it, what did they do? They abstained and they allowed the final nail in the coffin of international law and an international system of governance to happen. And now we're back to pre-World War I realities, not even pre-World War II. Psychospico didn't exist now, doesn't exist Psychospico. And the right to genocide, to occupy, to colonize, to ethnically cleanse, to do demographic changes is now enshrined in the United Nations Security Council with this vote passing without a veto by China and Russia. We have codified all of that. This is even worse than the situation before World War I. Before World War I, there is no international law. Everybody can do whatever they want to. Now, there is an international law passed by the United Nations Security Council that allows you to do what was being done prior to World War I legally. Legally, the United States is going to come now and kill Palestinian resistance openly with the blessing of a Security Council motion. So this is what it means for China and Russia not to veto this. And I think it seems like Gaza and the genocide in Gaza and exposing realities of the world hasn't stopped yet. Gaza is still revealing to us things. One of those things that just got revealed is that China will not stop trade with the Zionist colonies. China will win the bid to rebuild Israel, the Zionist colony. That's what China did last week. China and Russia will not veto besieging of Yemen and will allow the besiegement of Yemen to continue. China and Russia will not veto the occupation of Palestine, and neither China or Russia will come to the aid of any people that are questioning decolonization and liberation. And I feel sorry for Venezuela, that is even further away from the axis of resistance as the US is building up to attack them. I don't think China or Russia will come to their aid. In fact, it's Iran that is now smuggling weapons to help Venezuela before it's attacked.
So just to play devil's advocate here, Laith, I have choice words for this argument, but the argument that I've heard most frequently in response to my criticisms of Russia and China for not vetoing this resolution. And let me be clear that I suspect you agree with this, the primary responsibility for this genocidal mania that we're having to endure and that the people of the region are suffering from every single day, the primary responsibility lies on Western governments. I imagine you would agree with that. But I've not been shy at all about criticizing Russia and China for failing to veto this thing. And oftentimes what I'm told is, well, all of these Arab and Muslim states like Pakistan and Algeria, both of whom voted in favor of this thing, Somalia, who were on the Security Council, and a whole bunch of them that don't currently have seats on the Security Council, the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Kuwaitis, and so forth. And even Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, were in favor of this resolution. So, Russia and China weren't really in a position to veto it. They ultimately went along with the will of the Arab and Muslim states. How do you respond to that, Laith?
Well, obviously, Russia and China sat on their behind as every Arabic sovereign state or leader was killed over the last 30 years, and every sovereign state was Arabic or Muslim state was destroyed. They even sat on their behind as the motion came to attack Libya, and they didn't veto. And they sat on their behind as Pakistan lost its sovereign president, Imran Khan, that was supporting both China and Russia. They sat on their behind as Yemen gets clobbered. They sat at their behind as Syria was destroyed. So, you can't sit aside and watch every Arabic and Muslim leader that is actually a sovereign that loves their people and betterment of and wants to do business with China and Russia, watch them all get killed and then tell me, you know what, there's no good Arabs. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is even more racist. It's like, the Arabs, they deserve it. I've heard this. The Arabs this, the Arabs that, the Arabs fight each other, the Arabs if this, if the Arabs that. Well, the blacks this, the blacks that, the Latinos this, the Latinos that, the Asians this, the Asians that. I mean, the Greeks this, the Greeks that. Everybody deserves their apparently oppression. And if if a people can't resist the mighty empire that Russia and China are scared of, if the people in the Arabic world that have lived 30 years of non-stop death since the end of the Soviet Union, okay, 35 years, where we are the main, ones that are getting punched and clobbered on behalf of the whole world. If apparently we can't survive one state out of control of the empire, then it's our fault. But Russia needs to mobilize this whole army to face off Ukraine, while we have to face 80 countries and still stand in the resistance in Lebanon, in Palestine, in Yemen, in Iran. Look at that. Okay, so ultimately, Russia and China cannot be depended on to fight anybody's war, any liberationist war. It's not about the Arabs. I tell every African, every Asian, every Latin American, if you depend on Russia and China to come and help you when the empire comes for you, already know that you're not going to have that. Okay? Number one. Number two is, I don't need weapons from Russia and China. It could be great. It would be great if Russia sells weapons to the axis of resistance as much as it sells weapons to the collaborators of the empire. That could be great. It would be great if Russia actually sold the S-400s that it sold to Turkey to Iran, but it wouldn't do it. Okay, I don't care about the weapons of China and Russia. For God's sake, stop selling those weapons to our enemies. Okay, don't want to stop selling those weapons? No problem. DJI, all those drones that China is selling to the genocide in Gaza. All right, how about you stop trading? China being the number one trade partner of Israel throughout the genocide. I mean, there was demonstrations all around the world in countries from east to west. There was not one demonstration for Palestine in China. What does this tell me? How about Russia? Forget even protecting or defending the axis of resistance, or the Palestinians that are suffering a genocide. Forget all of that. How about you stop your own citizens from going to Israel? In the last two years, the number of Russians traveling to Israel has doubled during the genocide. Okay? And there's 2.5 million Israeli Russians. How about you tell your citizens not to participate in the genocide or arrest them when they come back from the genocide? In fact, Russia is the safest place right now for an Israeli, not in terms of safety of body, but of not having to see anything that is anti-Israeli. if an Israeli goes to Greece, as I did last a couple of weeks ago, they'll see all the walls painted of F the IDF, F Israel, Israelis out of here. Da, da, da. They will be, they will see demonstrations when they walk in London. They'll see demonstrations in Paris. They're not going to see anything anti-Zionist in the streets of Moscow when they go. So neither Russia or China changed any of their behaviors, neither the negative behaviors that were there against that are detrimental to the Palestinians and their cause, nor did they change their good behaviors that could be supportive of the axis of resistance of Palestine throughout this genocide. There's only been talk, and that is shameful. Shameful on countries that claim that they are the new poles rising in a multipolar world.
I just want to clarify one quick thing. You said that China was the largest trading partner. According to Al Jazeera, which did an article on this, and I think these are publicly available figures, China is by far the largest source of imports to the genocidal entity. It accounted in, I believe, 2024 for $19 billion of imports to the genocidal entity. In second place was the United States at about 9.4 billion. So it was well behind China. But on the export side, it's the United States, which is by far the biggest foreign buyer of Israeli goods at 17 billion. China's in third place at 2.9 billion. So certainly overall, China is one of the top 2 or 3 trading partners of the genocidal entity throughout this genocide. One thing I want to add to, I concur essentially with everything you said, Laith. And one thing I want to add is, when they trot out this argument about how all these Arab and Muslim states, supported this resolution, they omit to mention that every single resistance group in Palestine condemned it. Every single one. It was the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, and on, right across the political spectrum. It was only the collaborator and the very few people in Palestine who continue to prop up and support this collaborator who reportedly supported it. And if you actually care so much about opinion in the Arab and Muslim world, you would start by asking the Palestinian people themselves, what do you think about this resolution? And the answer that would have come back if China and Russia had paid any attention to it was a resounding veto. Veto the resolution. It's an abomination. So don't talk to us. I say to all those people out there who, you support the Palestinian cause, but you're trying to rationalize what China and Russia did. Don't talk to us about public opinion in the Arab and Muslim world when it was absolutely crystal clear that the vast majority of Palestinians were opposed to this thing and their wishes were completely disregarded. The one other thing I want to ask you about, Laith, I also want to say, I'm glad you mentioned Libya, because absolutely you're right. They didn't veto, China and Russia, that resolution calling for the no-fly zone over Libya, which led to the destruction of Libya, something that we could have foreseen. It was entirely foreseeable that the U.S. and its vassals would use that resolution to pursue their imperialistic program in Libya. At the time, as you may recall, Laith, Vladimir Putin was the prime minister of the Russian Federation, and Dimitri Medvedev was the president, because the Constitution of Russia barred Putin from running again during that particular time. And Putin criticized the resolution. He criticized Dimitri Medvedev for allowing that resolution to pass. So one would have thought that both the Russian government and the Chinese government learned a valuable lesson. Never trust the United States and its Western vassals to pursue some supposedly humanitarian objectives in a war zone, which they themselves have helped to destroy. So apparently that lesson wasn't learned. I completely concur that at the end of the day, whatever you may think, whether they had a rationalization for doing it or not, it is crystal clear that China and Russia are going to prioritize what they view as their own interests. and they aren't going to come to the salvation of peoples who are oppressed in the global South. I just,
one thing I would add to that, just so we can, I think, hammer it down clearly, even from a self-interest point of view, what China and Russia did was negative to their interests, actually. This is what's crazy about it.
I totally agree, but
Similarly,
I want to hear your explanation. I absolutely agree. Fire away.
similarly as the fall of Syria and abandoning Syria was so negative. Look at it this way. The Syrian people sacrificed 500,000 martyrs to fight off Wahhabi death squad hordes coming from China and Russia, coming from Uyghur, Uzbek, Turkmen, and Chechen. We, as Syrians, sacrificed to fight these monsters coming from China and Central Asia and Russia, basically the sphere of influence of China and Russia. And now Syria is abandoned. And those Uyghur death squads and Turkmen death squads are getting citizenship in Syria and are going to come back and hunt them, hunt China, hunt Russia in their own territory. Similarly, right now, Yemen gave an exemption to Chinese shipping in its siege of shipping through the Red Sea. It gave an exemption to Chinese ships. And instead of China taking advantage of this situation and doing all its trade through the Red Sea, but not stopping at Israel and actually becoming the number one shipping companies in the world because they're getting the fastest lane, they decided, no, we're going to continue shipping to Israel throughout this genocide, throughout the exemption that Ansarullah and the Yemeni military gave to them. This is self-harm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay? And this is all going to bite them in the behind. As soon as another war starts and a third war, and everybody's like, what the hell is China? What the hell Russia? I can't depend on you. Why should I risk? So this is really self-harm. It's even from a capitalist or selfish point of view.
Yeah. Plus, they missed a glorious opportunity to assume the role of moral leadership in the world, and instead, earned the wrath of a great many people in the global South. I've seen a lot of, notwithstanding that there are apologists out there, or people. To be fair to them, they're just trying to rationalize this, whatever, because they know that China and Russia are constantly being targeted by imperialist misadventures by Washington and so forth. I've seen a lot of negative commentary out there. There are people out there, respected commentators, for example, Francesca Albanese and, Craig Muhaiber, who have just issued blistering critiques of this resolution and really are, aghast that neither China nor Russia vetoed it. So there was quite a moment here where they could have stepped up to the plate and assumed a role of moral leadership, and they just totally squandered it, man. Very disappointed. Before we go, I just have to quickly ask you one other thing, Laith. And this pains me to ask you this question and explore this because the mother of my children happens to be of Algerian origin. I have many in-laws who are of Algerian origin. What the hell happened? Why did the government of Algeria support this abomination in the UN Security Council?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen thousands upon thousands of social media posts by Algerian peoples apologizing to the Palestinian people about what this government has done. I don't think anyone in Algeria is happy about this, but let's put it in this context of the destruction of Syria, the destruction of Iraq, Libya, Yemen. There was only Algeria left out of the republics the Arabic republics that escaped colonialism through armed struggle, it was the only one standing left. Everybody else, including, by the way, Russia and China, not vetoing in the same week that they didn't veto the recolonization of Palestine, they did not veto the United Nations acknowledging the Western Sahara, occupied Western Sahara, as part of Morocco. So that was a checkmate for Algeria by China and Russia also. So I think Algeria recognized that it's left standing alone, that China and Russia are even plotting with Morocco, and that on their side they have Libya on fire, where Russia has bases. And so I think the threats must have come very deeply to this government in Algeria, which is unfortunately packed with old guard from the revolution of Algeria that have detached themselves from reality and from society, and now find themselves with no multipolar world, with no Arab nationalist team to stand with, and with an abandonment of China and Russia. So yes, they just buckled down. But this is going to be one of the reasons that there will be change in China. I tell you, as we look at this very bleak situation in the Arabic world, where all the original revolutionary states and movements have been destroyed and or curtailed to corners, as these dictators and collaborators feel so confident that they can come out and vote and lobby for the recolonization of the Palestinians and the codification of their genocide, now we have a possibility in the whole Arabic world of explosions of revolutionary movements that will not have to deal with all the baggage that existed, let's say, for movements like the Ba'ath Party and other parties that went through bloody eras of fighting. Now there's going to be a true Arabic spring that's not coming from the empire, that there's a big chance of it breaking out. We don't know which Arabic country is going to break out in, but the revolution is in the air.
Right. Just last comment for me, and I invite you to confirm this or deny it if you disagree, but I've not ever regarded Algeria as democracy, and I have no doubt that if it were truly a democracy, there's no way its government would have supported this resolution. Do you concur with that assessment of the nature of the Algerian government?
Of course, it's not a democracy, and there's no democracy anywhere on this planet.
Well said. Thank you very much, Laith, for this excellent discussion, and I look forward to our next one.
Perfect. One last thing I would say, everybody should go and watch our documentaries from Greece, which I hope, Dimitri, you like them. The latest one is about weapons manufacturers in Greece that are supplying the genocide. More are on the way. And we're also traveling to Italy to cover the history of pro-Palestine and anti-fascist struggles in Italy. Please go to the website freepalestine.video, donate, so we can continue bringing you all this content.
Thank you for reminding me of that, Laith. I actually did watch your most recent, I think it's your most recent one, where you and a comrade in Athens went to the site of a subsidiary of, I think it's Israeli Aerospace Forces, and some Gestapo goons apparently stopped you from filming and took your IDs and all the rest of it. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable. So I just, the Greek government is an absolute disgrace. Since we're on the subject of non-representative government, it does not represent the Greek people. In Exarchia, where you've been, these are excellent videos. I recommend them to the audience. I just before I left Athens, in October, I was walking through this anarchist section of central Athens, Exarchia, and there was a huge banner of Yahya Sinwar, the image of Yahya Sinwar, saying, he will live forever, in the streets of Athens. And it was not something that had just been put up there from a protest. It had been there for days. So, the good news is, at the level of the street, the people are with our Arab brothers and sisters who are fighting against this scourge of white supremacist imperialism. Thank you again for speaking with us today, and we'll talk soon.
See you soon.
Peace out.